What happens when imagination goes too far? When science fiction and fantasy stop being safe dreams and start exposing the fears that society once buried? Across Europe, filmmakers dared to challenge authority, religion, and morality through stories that blurred the line between wonder and nightmare. But the price was silent censorship and decades of exile. These are the 15 European sci-fi and fantasy films banned for going too far. Number 15. The Last Woman, 1976. In the turbulent decade of the 1970s, French cinema often danced on the edge of madness. The Last Woman, directed by Marco Ferreri, was marketed as a modern allegory of masculinity and collapse. It starred Gérard Depardieu as a laid-off factory worker consumed by jealousy, loneliness, and existential despair. Beneath its quiet domestic setting, the film explored the disintegration of human identity amid the industrial wasteland. What disturbed censors was not violence, but emotional dissection. The film stripped away comfort, exposing the fragile ego of man against social change. Critics called it nihilistic, others found it prophetic. Italian and French authorities banned it from several regions, citing moral degradation. Ferreri's refusal to cut a single frame turned the controversy into legend. The production was chaotic. Ferreri clashed with distributors who wanted a more commercial release. Depardieu defended the film as a work of philosophy, not perversion. Festivals either booed or hailed it as revolutionary. In Spain, it was locked away for nearly a decade, until independent screenings revived its reputation as a cry of despair from a collapsing Europe. Today, The Last Woman is remembered as one of the boldest acts of defiance in French cinema. It revealed how the collapse of ideals could be more terrifying than any monster. It stands as a mirror held up to the fragile soul of modern man, daring to show the truth behind civility. Number 14. In the Realm of the Senses of Fear, 1978. From Poland came a film that terrified authorities not through gore but through ideas. In the Realm of the Senses of Fear, directed by Andrzej Żuławski, was an unofficial project smuggled through political chaos. Shot partly underground, it told of a scientist haunted by visions of angels and demons who represented the extremes of human faith and fear. The regime considered it a direct attack on religious authority. State officials seized the negatives, claiming it could corrupt the youth. Żuławski was already infamous for his rebellious style, and the government banned him from working in Poland for years. The film was completed in France using fragments of the original reels secretly saved by the crew. Critics who managed to see it described it as cosmic horror fused with spiritual tragedy. Censors in West Germany and Britain refused distribution, calling it blasphemous. Żuławski later said that he never made horror to frighten, but to show what belief can do to the human mind. Production was dangerous. The set was raided twice by officials. Actors performed knowing their footage might never be seen. When the film finally resurfaced in the early 1990s, it gained cult status as a lost vision of metaphysical rebellion. Its legacy endures as a testament to artistic resistance. In the Realm of the Senses of Fear, warned that censorship itself becomes the monster when society fears the power of its own imagination. Number 13. The Saragossa Manuscript, 1965. Polish director Wojciech Has crafted a labyrinth of dreams and duels in the Saragossa Manuscript, adapted from Jan Potocki's legendary novel. On its surface, it was an adventure of soldiers lost in 18th century Spain. Beneath, it became an infinite hall of mirrors, where every story contained another. To audiences, it was mesmerizing. To censors, it was mutiny. Communist authorities accused Haas of glorifying decadence and mysticism at a time when socialist realism was law. They cut distribution and ordered prints withdrawn, calling it ideologically poisonous. Some reels vanished entirely. Actors recalled working under surveillance. Dialogue hinting at free will was redubbed. The director refused to simplify the film's complex structure, insisting that chaos is the only truth left to man. When the uncut version reached Western festivals, critics like Luis Buñuel and Jerry Garcia hailed it as genius. Only after the Cold War did Poland restore it in full, discovering that its banned confusion had predicted an entire generation's search for meaning. The Saragossa Manuscript remains a cosmic joke whispered through history, a reminder that the most dangerous fantasy is one that teaches you to question the storyteller. Number 12. The City of the Lost Children, 1995. From France's dark imagination came La Cité des Enfants Perdus, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro. Its steampunk world of fog and forgotten docks told of a scientist who kidnaps children to steal their dreams. Visually, it was stunning. Morally, it terrified censors. In parts of Eastern Europe and Catholic enclaves of Spain, local boards banned it, citing satanic imagery and corruption of minors. The grotesque carnival aesthetic and cloned villains were seen as mockery of religion and family. Filming was arduous. Sets flooded repeatedly. The child actors endured months inside dark, water-filled chambers. Jeunet insisted the film was a fable about innocence under machinery. Distributors disagreed, marketing pulled back, and theaters refused screenings. When it finally reached international audiences, critics compared it to Metropolis and Fellini. What had once been forbidden became a symbol of European creative freedom in the 1990s. The City of the Lost Children proved that fantasy could still scare censors long after monsters disappeared. That imagination itself, when industrialized, can look too much like truth. Number 11. Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, 1970. From Czechoslovakia came a dream that terrified both church and state. Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, directed by Jaromil Jireš, arrived at the peak of the Czech New Wave. To audiences, it looked like a delicate Gothic fairy tale. To authorities, it was revolution disguised as poetry. The film followed young Valerie through a surreal landscape where priests turned to predators and miracles hid behind masks. It captured the loss of innocence and the corruption of belief. Critics called it hauntingly beautiful, but government censors saw blasphemy in every frame. They accused Jireš of mocking faith and authority. The Ministry of Culture banned it almost immediately. Behind the scenes, production was tense. Cinematographer Jan Kurik was ordered to tone down its symbolism. The director refused. Secret agents attended screenings taking notes. When foreign festivals requested the film, officials claimed it no longer existed. Prints were hidden in locked archives until 1980. When rediscovered, it became a cult treasure across Europe. Filmmakers from Britain to France called it a lost masterpiece of surreal freedom. Its music echoed in later generations of dream cinema, inspiring filmmakers who turned censorship into art. Valerie and Her Week of Wonders remains a shimmering paradox, a banned fantasy that spoke truth through illusion. It reminds us that wonder can survive even under walls of fear. Number 10. Possession. 1981. Berlin Divided. Madness Unbound. Possession, directed by Andrzej Żuławski, was one of the most disturbing European films ever made. Officially, it was a psychological drama about a marriage collapsing in Cold War isolation. In truth, it was a howl of rage against conformity, faith, and politics. Starring Isabella Adjani and Sam Neill, it portrayed emotional breakdowns that transcended sanity. When Adjani's performance turned violent and surreal, censors lost control. West Germany's board declared it indecent. Britain placed it on the notorious video nasties list. France refused to promote it. Even Poland banned it sight unseen, claiming it was anti-humanist. The production consumed its cast. Żuławski demanded real exhaustion, filming scenes for days without rest. Adjani later said it nearly destroyed her mind. Rumors spread that the director used the Cold War setting as coded criticism of divided Europe. Authorities believed him. They tried to erase it through silence. Yet the film refused to die. Bootleg copies spread underground until it was rediscovered in the late 1990s. Modern critics now call it a masterpiece of emotional apocalypse. Possession's legacy endures as proof that horror and fantasy need not hide behind monsters. Sometimes, the true horror is love disintegrating beneath repression. It was banned for madness, but remembered for truth. Number 9. The Hourglass Sanatorium, 1973. From Poland's surrealist heart came a film that turned memory into nightmare. The Hourglass Sanatorium, directed by Wojciech Haas, was adapted from the stories of Bruno Schulz, a Jewish writer murdered during the Second World War. On the surface, it followed a young man visiting his dying father in a decaying sanatorium where time itself had collapsed. But underneath its dreamlike imagery lay a meditation on death, oppression, and identity erased by history. When it premiered, critics were mesmerized, yet uneasy. Haas's vision was strange and poetic. Trains moved through mist clocks, melted, and rooms shifted like dreams. But for Poland's communist government, the symbolism was dangerous. They saw its portrayal of decay and spiritual emptiness as a veiled attack on the state. Authorities demanded that the film be pulled from cinemas, labeling it anti-socialist and subversive. Censors banned it domestically and tried to block its entry into the Cannes Film Festival. Has fought back through intermediaries, and when the film finally screened in France, it won the jury prize, embarrassing Polish officials. The director returned home to hostility, stripped of funding, and his career nearly ended. Over time, the Hourglass Sanatorium became a cult classic, one of the great lost masterpieces of European surrealism. Its dreamlike dissection of time, death, and memory influenced filmmakers from Terry Gilliam to Guillermo del Toro. It was once condemned for being incomprehensible. Now it is celebrated for daring to say that trauma cannot be censored. In the ruins of its imagery lies a truth that frightened governments everywhere. That memory, once awakened, cannot be controlled. Number 8. The Cremator, 1969. Czechoslovakia's The Cremator by Juraj Herz remains one of the most haunting and misunderstood films ever made. Released in the shadow of the Soviet invasion, it disguised political terror beneath the face of psychological horror. The story followed Kopfer Kingel, a funeral worker who believes he is saving souls by burning bodies. Slowly, his obsession merges with fascist ideology as he begins sending living victims to their spiritual liberation. Censors expected a gothic horror. What they got was a searing political allegory. Hertz portrayed totalitarianism not as an external monster, but as a seductive whisper in the mind. The government quickly recognized itself in Kopfer Kingel's deranged devotion. Within days, the film was pulled from theaters and buried by the Ministry of Culture. Behind the scenes, Hertz faced threats from officials who accused him of spreading anti-socialist hysteria. His cast and crew were interrogated. The film was banned for over 20 years. Yet underground copies survived, passed between filmmakers and students who saw in it the most chilling portrait of obedience ever filmed. When it was rediscovered after the fall of communism, critics hailed it as a masterpiece of dark satire and expressionism. The Cremator is now studied as one of Europe's most profound anti-authoritarian films. Its legacy cuts deep. It proved that horror could reveal truth through metaphor, and that laughter in the face of tyranny could be the most subversive weapon of all. Hertz turned the machinery of death into a mirror, and the world finally saw itself reflected. Number 7. The Devils, 1971. Few films shook the foundations of European cinema like The Devils. Directed by Ken Russell and based on Aldous Huxley's The Devils of Loudun, it chronicled a true 17th-century event where mass hysteria and political manipulation led to the destruction of a French priest accused of heresy. Russell transformed history into a fever dream. The film's architecture, designed by Derek Jarman, looked like a hellish cathedral of white stone. The performances were volcanic. Oliver Reed as Father Grandier and Vanessa Redgrave as the tormented Sister Jean turned spiritual corruption into operatic madness. But the controversy began before the cameras even stopped rolling. The Catholic Church condemned the project. Warner Bros. Demanded cuts. Censors across Europe labeled it blasphemous and obscene. The British Board of Film Classification removed entire sequences. In Italy and Spain, screenings were raided by police. Russell defended the film as a study of hypocrisy and political control. Yet the damage was done. It was banned outright in several countries and heavily censored elsewhere. Even today, the complete version, known as The Devil's Uncut, remains officially unavailable in many territories. Behind the scenes, Russell's set was chaotic but electric. Actors fainted from heat and exhaustion. The director refused to compromise his vision, declaring he would rather the film never be released than be diluted. He almost got his wish. For decades, The Devils circulated only through bootlegs whispered about like a forbidden ritual. Its legacy is monumental. The Devils remains one of cinema's boldest confrontations with faith, authority, and hysteria. It was banned for showing the truth behind sanctity, the corruption of power wrapped in holy robes. And that truth, even half a century later, still burns too bright for many to face. Number 6. Santa Sangre, 1989. From the wild heart of Chilean French surrealism came Alejandro Jodorowsky's Sangre. It was part fantasy, part nightmare, and part spiritual resurrection. The film followed a circus boy who witnesses his mother's arms being severed during a religious act and grows into a man haunted by her presence, guiding him through visions of redemption and horror. Audiences in Europe were stunned. Critics praised its artistry, but governments saw danger. Italy, France, and Britain all reacted harshly, fearing its religious imagery, and violent allegory would offend both church and state. In Britain, it was denied certification for years. In Italy, certain screenings were raided by local authorities. Censors accused Jodorowsky of turning faith into blasphemy and madness into art. The production itself was chaos. Shot in Mexico City under guerrilla conditions, the film used real circus performers and non-actors. Crew members recalled Jodorowsky's hypnotic directing style, pushing his cast into trances to achieve genuine emotion. When the film premiered at Cannes, it was both cheered and condemned. Some critics compared it to Fellini, while others called it demonic. But as years passed, Sangre found a home among dreamers. It was restored by cult distributors and reclaimed as one of the most visionary works of surreal horror ever made. Its banned status only strengthened its legend. Today, Sangre is studied for its exploration of trauma and faith. It stands as proof that when art bleeds truth, even censorship cannot silence it. Number 5. Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, 1975. No European film tested the limits of art and morality, like Pier Paolo Pasolini's Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom. Inspired by the writings of the Marquis de Sade, it relocated the story to the final days of fascist Italy. The film depicted a group of aristocrats who turned their prisoners into instruments of domination and despair. It was not about pleasure, but power. The result was an explosion of outrage. Banned in Italy, France, Britain, Australia, and nearly every European nation, the film became a symbol of forbidden cinema. Governments claimed it was obscene. Critics called it unbearable. But Pasolini's intent was political. He wanted to show how fascism reduced humanity to consumption and control. Behind the scenes, tragedy followed. Pasolini was murdered shortly after finishing the film under mysterious circumstances. Rumors spread that his death was connected to Salo's content. Production reels were stolen, and black market versions circulated across Europe. For decades, Salo was screened only in censored fragments. In 1994, it was finally restored by the British Film Institute, sparking another round of controversy. Even today, many cinemas refuse to show it, yet scholars now regard it as one of the most important works of political art ever made. Salo's legacy is painful, but profound. It forced Europe to confront the brutality beneath civilization. Banned for its horror, it became a mirror of truth that power wanted, shattered. Number 4. The Holy Mountain, 1973. Alejandro Jodorowsky struck again years before Sangre with The Holy Mountain, a hallucinatory journey that fused mysticism with rebellion. Funded by John Lennon and produced independently in Mexico, it gathered seekers from across Europe in a cinematic pilgrimage through greed, spirituality, and illusion. On screen, it followed a Christ-like wanderer guided by an alchemist through towers of gold, soldiers of wax, and planets of vice. Each sequence symbolized a human sin mirrored in modern capitalism. Censors had no language for it. Authorities in Spain and Italy called it dangerous propaganda against religion and order. Several prints were seized. Screenings were canceled by police claiming it violated moral decency. Behind the curtain, the production bordered on myth. Jodorowsky performed real rituals on set. Actors fasted, meditated, and lived in isolation to purify themselves. Some crew members fled mid-shoot fearing madness. When it premiered at Cannes, the audience alternated between standing ovations and walkouts. Major distributors refused to release it. The film was locked away for decades until the early 2000s when its rights were restored and the original negative rediscovered. Its release on home video sparked a renaissance of psychedelic cinema across Europe and America. The Holy Mountain endures as one of the most banned yet beloved works of spiritual rebellion. It dared to strip reality bare and reveal that enlightenment itself might be a lie sold by those in power. Number 3. Angst, 1983. Austria's Gerald Kargl made one of the most banned psychological films in Europe with Angst. Loosely inspired by real crimes, it followed a murderer released from prison who drifts through a wintry landscape searching for victims while narrating his own madness. Censors in West Germany, France, and Britain banned it instantly, labeling it morally unacceptable. The camera's floating movements, shot by celebrated cinematographer Zbigniew Rybczynski, placed viewers inside the killer's perspective, erasing any boundary between observer and accomplice. Production was equally unnerving. Cargill mortgaged his home to finance the film. Local police tried to shut down exterior shoots, fearing copycat violence. The soundtrack, composed by Klaus Schulze of Tangerine Dream, throbbed like a heartbeat gone wrong. For years, Angst circulated only on bootleg VHS tapes. It later influenced directors from Gaspar Noé to Nicholas Winding Refn, who called it pure terror, purified through art. Banned for showing horror without distance, Angst revealed the cold machinery of human cruelty. It asked not why monsters exist, but why we keep watching them. Number 2. The Hour of the Wolf, 1968. Ingmar Bergman's The Hour of the Wolf was not banned for gore or politics, but for confronting madness itself. The Swedish director turned his own breakdown into a fevered fairy tale. Starring Max von Sydow and Liv Ullmann, it followed a painter haunted by monsters who may be demons or his audience. When released, the Swedish Film Institute hesitated to promote it, calling it too disturbing and morally unfit for export. Italy and Finland temporarily blocked screenings, citing mental corruption. Catholic groups condemned it as anti-human. Production was equally tormented. Bergman filmed on the remote island of Fårö while suffering panic attacks and insomnia. He claimed that every nightmare in the script came from his own hallucinations. Crew members described eerie silences on set, broken by the sea wind and Bergman's whispered direction. At first, the film confused critics. Later, it became a cornerstone of European psychological horror. Censors had tried to protect audiences from insanity, but Bergman revealed that madness already lived inside them. Its legacy endures as the film that made nightmares sacred. The Hour of the Wolf turned fear into poetry and censorship into confession. Number 1. The Trial 1962. When Orson Welles filmed Franz Kafka's The Trial in Europe, he turned bureaucracy into nightmare. Anthony Perkins played Joseph K., a man arrested for a crime never named, wandering through endless corridors of guilt. Though shot in Yugoslavia and France, the film was condemned across Eastern Europe. Authorities called it subversive, claiming its faceless courts mirrored their own regimes. In Yugoslavia, screenings were canceled mid-reel. Czechoslovakia banned it outright for spreading anxiety. Behind the camera, Welles fought constant shortages, abandoned factories became sets, and script pages changed daily. He later said, "Kafka wrote the prophecy. I just filmed the evidence." Western critics were split. Some saw chaos. Others saw genius. Decades later, it was recognized as one of Welles's boldest creations, blending expressionism, existential dread, and political satire. The Trial endures as proof that fantasy can indict reality more sharply than any manifesto. It was banned for pessimism, but what governments feared was its precision, a mirror too exact for comfort. Across Europe, these films broke every rule and paid the price. They turned dreams into rebellion and fantasy into forbidden truth. Yet time proved stronger than censorship. Which of these lost visions deserves a new life today? Tell us in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and keep watching as we uncover more buried legends of cinema.